Incremental Gainz podcast. Today, my guest is Tom Spencer, a professional rugby league player. Want to get into a bit of the background and how where he was brought up and some of the mental adversity he's had to deal with in life and how he got through it and what he hopes to pass on to people in the future. So thanks for coming on, Tom. How are we doing?
Great, cheers for having me. Yeah, just trying to make as good a kind of incremental gains as I can at this kind of limited moment, really.
Nice little plug there, thank you. What have you been up to during lockdown? It's been probably 8 weeks now. How are you keeping yourself in shape, and how's what's it looking like in terms of the rugby getting back to playing?
Well, at the minute we don't have any official word on when it's coming back. Obviously, I've seen that stuff like football and other non-contact sports are going to kind of slowly drip feed their way back in. I think not only is it the contact element, but it's the funding behind the testing for all players as well. Right. So there's a lot of issues that they're really working through, and playing behind closed doors is affordable for football, but for rugby we really rely on that money. So hopefully, just when it's all safe and financially viable, it can start back up again.
Yeah. How do you feel about that? Just as a side point, playing behind closed doors, if you had to, because obviously you feed off the crowd. The crowd are there to support the clubs. How do you feel?
I think it's not as good. It's not as enjoyable to do it, but nowadays you've got streaming service and stuff. So I think it's more of a case of it's not ideal, but you've got to adapt to survive, haven't you? And the team that adapt to the lack of atmosphere and who can make their own atmosphere and get themselves in the right mindset are the ones that are going to come out on top, really. So it's not ideal at all, but you can't dwell on it. When the time comes and it's safe to do so, you've got to be ready to go with no excuses.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's been I don't know if you follow UFC and mixed martial arts, but some of the events they've had on the past few weeks have been behind closed doors. There's been no crowd there. There's very restricted access in terms of the cornermen and the commentators, and it's a completely different experience watching it without the crowd. So for the actual fighters inside the octagon or the ring, they've got to, sometimes they can feed off the crowd, but they've got to have their own sort of mental strength there to build on that.
Yeah, I did watch a few of those fights. I'm a big UFC fan. I think it's just an interesting, different dynamic because you can hear the corners, and it gives you a bit more of an insight into what kind of strategy goes into it and that kind of thing. And then obviously some people feed off emotion, don't they? So I think when you've got an emotional fighter, it's like the more kind of calm and thoughtful ones kind of they get their head around the situation and done well. But
that was good as well from
Francis Ngannou's knocker. He's an animal, isn't he?
I know, yeah. I was going to say that in some of the heavyweight fights that have been on recently, you can hear them getting fatigued, so you can hear the breathing and the heavy breathing and that. But for the likes of Francis Ngannou, he doesn't need that long anyway. Does 30 seconds and he's knocked you out.
No, but perhaps hopefully giving a few more people a bit of kind of admiration for the conditioning levels that are required. To like a layman, it could look like they're not doing much, but they're in quite an exhausting position, because I think it's good that the UFC is getting as big as it is, but there's a lot of people, as soon as it's going to ground, they're booing and all that kind of stuff. And I think to be a true kind of aficionado or something, you got to appreciate all aspects of it. So
definitely. I know you said before we started recording you did a bit of freestyle wrestling as a kid. Was that prior to starting playing rugby?
No. Well, I started playing rugby as soon as I could walk, really. I was no different to anyone else growing up in Wigan. It's rugby mad and that, and the team that I seen growing up, I just wanted to be like them. And then as soon as I heard that, rugby players do freestyle wrestling to help them with the tackling, and I had a friend at the time who was doing it. I just went down to Aspel Wrestling Club, and and Roy Wood, he's still keeping it going there now. he was coaching St Helens out of wrestling. And to my knowledge, they're the first ones in this country that used freestyle wrestling to benefit the game.
Yeah, we had Charlie Bolin from Aspel Wrestling Club on last week. He's a cracking lad. He came down and gave us a seminar last year at the Jiu-Jitsu club, and it's something I'd like to get better at. Definitely the wrestling aspects of it and the stand-up. I wrestled with Charlie and Mike Grundy as well for a few years before he moved on to what he was doing on like the big stages. Yeah. And they're I mean, to me, when I was young, because I didn't really understand it all and the UFC wasn't around straight away, I didn't really at the time realise how exceptional some of the people that were there are. And then you realise, like, hang on a minute, it's like, people like those guys don't grow on trees, and it's showing now, because I think England's always had the kind of stereotype that we're not a wrestling country when you look at USA and Russia, but especially in the north of England, it's old-fashioned catch wrestling. That's where it all comes from. Yeah, it's got a massive heritage, hasn't it, in terms of wrestling in the northwest, definitely, especially Wigan. Yeah, I mean, I did see, like, once, I can't remember where it was, I've seen it, but if you follow like the kind of like family tree kind of thing of who trained who, you can trace pretty much all, like, well, not all of them, but a big portion of like mixed martial artists and pro wrestlers back to Riley's gym, which was in Welly in Wigan. It was a predecessor to Aspel Wrestling Club. So people like The Rock has been trained by someone who's been trained by someone from Wigan. And it's bad to think like our small area can have a big impact like that. I heard a story that I can't remember the guy's name in Wigan. He was the main catch wrestling instructor. What was his name? Well, there's Roy Wood. I think and then Billy Riley taught him, I think. So I think it was either Billy Riley or Roy Wood. I think it'd have been Billy Riley, like the earlier proponents of it, actually taught the Kimura to Kimura. Kimura was a Japanese pro wrestler, mixed martial artist. He was known for this figure four wrist lock. And that's how we got his name, Kimura. But he was actually taught by a Wiganer. Roy showed me that when I was young. I mean, it's obviously not allowed in freestyle. But then, you get young, energetic kids, and sometimes, like, they get a bit carried away and they try and throw the weight about. And then I think I was in like a position where I was pinning someone and they were getting the forearm into my neck. And he said, when they leave their arm like that, if they're doing that, just do that. And then after that, and then from there, I got interested in submissions and stuff like that. And that gave me, I mean, I wanted to get involved in it a lot sooner, but going professional with rugby got in the way. But it's always something that I've wanted to do, to get into jiu-jitsu or the submissions. I think, like I said before, a lot of, from my experience, a lot of rugby players, whether it's professional or amateur, gravitate towards the grappling martial arts. Maybe if it's towards the end of the career, whether it's because of injuries or they've stopped playing or whatever, they do start to gravitate towards jiu-jitsu wrestling because of that. You can still have that contact, but it's a lot more controlled and less there's less impact, definitely. I mean, it's interesting because the actual wrestling that's part of the rugby league game now, it's almost become its own style of wrestling, because you're in 2-on-1 and 3-on-1 situations, and it's for only a few seconds. So it's in a different context, isn't it, than actual Olympic wrestling or whatever. Got rugby team lads going, he's the best wrestler in our team, but then when you put in you go outside and you train at a wrestling gym as a team, like, it's completely different. So it's almost become its own specialist skill. And I mean, I think a lot of negative stuff gets said about it because the cynical fans see it as like, well, it's slowing the game down, it's their tactics, but it's always, they always find a way to, if you're defending, to slow the attack down legally and efficiently, and it's just like a constant, the rules are catching up and whatever, and it's really interesting to me. And I think it'd be good, for like Sky
So they always showing the attacking side of things, with these touch screens, the video analysis. I think they should get more people on to talk about, the subtleties and stuff, what go onto it. Like you see a few half Nelsons and a few
definitely, yeah,
like,
the pinning system that people are using in the tackle and that, that'd be fascinating.
I think more people could see the work that goes into it. They'll say, actually, you've got someone who's providing, is a difference maker in the team because of his little efforts in the wrestle, as opposed to your superstars who are doing exceptional things with the ball.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never thought of that point of view as well. Yeah, I mean, that'd be fascinating if you had that aspect of the analysis on a game as well. Yeah. So when did you, like you said, you'd always wanted to play rugby. You was playing rugby since you can remember. You always had a ball in hand. At what point did you start thinking, I could make a career out of this and turn professional?
Well, it kind of was in a bit of a peak and a trough. I mean, when you're young, you don't grow up and think, I want to do something mediocre. Everyone wants to be an astronaut or the world champion or whatever it is. And I was lucky. I had a team that was the most well-known team in rugby league on my doorstep in Wigan. I was like, I'm going to be like them, and no one could tell me otherwise. Yeah. And then you get to high school, and then you're in a bigger pool of lads who were all, perhaps 2-3 years ahead of you in physical maturity, and then it starts to set in it's probably not going to happen for me and that kind of stuff. But you kind of couple that with a lot of kids, when they get to that point, they just quit because it's not going to happen. But you couple that with the fact that my household was really unusual in the sense that my sister was an international sprinter, and my dad was the stereotypical, you're going to do this, push it, I have my own failings in sport, so I'm going to create a family of athletes kind of thing.
Right.
And it was, there was some positives that came from that, but there was a lot of turmoil what came out of it. And so it was partly I wasn't allowed to quit anything, and it was partly, I want to rub it in your face and show it that I can do it. Mm-hmm. But then along with that, I'll have a good game on a weekend, and my dad would go, see, I made you do that because I got you fired up. So it was like a love-hate kind of thing. Yeah. And I just kind of over the years learned to kind of take the bad with the good and kind of detach emotionally from things. Mm-hmm. And I think that's perhaps helped me, because in a professional rugby environment, you've got to take a bollocking from your teammates or from your coaches, and you can't take it personal because there's money on the line and the stakes are high. Yeah. So, you've got to just say, yeah, that was my fault, take it on the chin. And,
like you say, even in a match, even in the middle of a match, if something doesn't go your way, you've got to have the ability to switch it and say, right, draw a line under it, next player, let's move on, yeah?
Yeah.
If you start to dwell on things in life and in sport, then that's how we end up with anxiety and all that kind of stuff, isn't it?
I think the real difference with me was that, say my sister did athletics, so from my dad's point of view, he could go, right, he already knew about weight training he was a cyclist and a rugby player. He knew about that, and then he could learn the basic principles of developing speed and endurance and whatever. And it's controllable in a one-person sport where he can keep her on track and all that. But then there's also the fact that she's then growing up and perhaps, is this for me, is it not for me, and whatever. And it's I think the aspects I've learned from that is it's more a case of getting your message across in the most efficient way that makes them want to do it, rather than just sticking a rocket up their arse. And I think that absolutely killed her off from wanting to go she did go further despite it, really. But I think mentally it took the enjoyment away from it for her. And I think with me, because I could go off to a team, I had that little bit of an escape of the scrutiny. But I think from now that I know more about sports science, if I was going to tell someone how to train a kid growing up and that kind of stuff, I think you keep certain positives from it. You know, I'm not going to say it was all bad because there were good things, but you definitely changed the delivery method, and a lot of it was like, you know, your typical old school bloke who's just going to whip someone into shape. And I think I'm thinking of it from
what people's
I'm
motivations
thinking of it
are.
from a lad's point of view. I take a challenge as personal, and I want to rise to it. But you know, women's sports a different kettle of fish because you know there's all kinds of things you got to consider when not everyone's wired up that way. And I think it's a testament to what my sister did, because she did it in spite of it rather than because of it. Whereas I think it was more positive for me because I just thought, right, I've got a fire lit under me now because I'm gonna show. So
I think you've got to understand what motivates people, haven't you, and whether that's intrinsic or extrinsic, whether people are moving towards goals or away from things. You've got to understand the person you're working with rather than just if I kick you up the arse, you're going to go and do it.
Yeah, because I mean, like, there's a lot of other examples you see. If you go to any, I mean, Wigan's like almost no other town in the country for the density of loads of amateur teams in one area. Mm-hmm. And like, you go to any given field and you've got like angry parents who are giving ref abuse. They're giving the kids' teammates abuse. Like, my kid's the best, he should be getting the ball in that situation. They're letting us down or whatever, or dragging him off, you know, you're rubbish, like all of that, that's not good enough. Like, and it really is like, for someone who's not grown up in that environment, it's an eye-opener, I think. But I mean, I think rather than take the negatives of it from myself, I just kind of like take it as a blessing on how it prepared me for tougher challenges. So I kind of accidentally stumbled across Stoicism as a result of all that, because
what time was this? What period did you start looking into Stoicism?
Probably in my teens, right? Because when I was young, I don't know, about eight or something, when Gladiator first came out, and being the kind of like wannabe like macho guy that my dad was, he's like you'll watch stuff like Gladiator and Braveheart and all that and toughen you up, and then I loved it, you know. And then I realised, like, from like, my mum was a librarian, so anything like that I would be interested in. I'd have the opportunity to kind of look it up in books, so I've always been inquisitive. So anyway, I looked up, I realised Marcus Aurelius was a real person, even though it wasn't a factual film. And he wrote a book called Meditations, which is basically arguably what you'd say is the Bible of Stoicism. Mm-hmm. And it's basically, you know, in simple terms, just taking the world for what it is and like being prepared for any kind of negative eventuality and controlling what you can control. So that really steered me in a good direction, because the path I was about to take had so many ups and downs, and success wasn't guaranteed, and it's not, to be honest, worked out how I imagined it as a young kid. Mm-hmm. But it's more the fact that, you know, you just go in with no finish line to just better yourself, and it doesn't matter if you don't accomplish what, you know, anyone's preconceived notions of success are. It's about just you being better than yourself every day.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think we're on maybe like your episode, maybe 10, I think, and in nearly every episode, the idea of Stoicism and the philosophies of Stoicism has come up. It's interesting that it has become not popular, but a lot more people are aware of the kind of philosophies behind it and how objective it is, and looking at yourself inside before like your perceptions of the exterior, and controlling what you can control and all that kind of thing. It's funny how it's just become in more people's consciousness. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think perhaps like anything to do with psychology or working on spirituality or anything like that, it would seem like 20, 30 years ago, someone has said, you're aware with the fairies, like, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you look at like a lot of my heroes across different sports, they were ahead of their time. They were already doing that, and that's the reason they were so good. I mean, the Last Dance documentary about Michael Jordan,
it's phenomenal.
I mean, the coach Phil Jackson in the 80s and 90s, he was talking about finding your center, controlling your breathing, Zen Buddhism and ancient kind of like teachings of Native Americans and stuff like that, and it's been there for generations. But I just think since perhaps the Industrial Revolution, we've gone completely off track about who we are and who we want to be as humans. So I mean that's why I'm into trying to keep myself as living as I wouldn't say it's paleo, but it's as authentic of and healthy of a lifestyle as I can live.
Yeah. So let's go into that then a bit. We'll come back to your professional rugby career in a bit, but while we're on the subject of stoicism and philosophy and practices, can you go into a bit more detail about some of the practices that you use during a day, whether that's your morning routine, maybe your eating habits, your training?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, like, what I've done for years, like before all this, I was like, I had a picture in my mind because in some things I get kind of like addicted to trying to get a perfect kind of environment and a setup. But I mean, stoicism tells you that nothing's perfect and you just got to keep it going as best as possible. Yeah. But I was always fixed on like, this is my perfect diet, this is my perfect training plan, and this is how I'm going to conduct myself and everything. And then when something got in the way, I was like, no, that's not good enough. And you beat yourself up about it. And then I realised, like, you've just got to kind of stay on track as best you can. So sometimes I do fall off and have a cheat meal. I will, like, have too much to drink or whatever, when the opportunity comes and that. But I think the main part of it is getting straight back on to what you're doing and not dwelling on it. So, I mean, I think to start every day with like your anchoring kind of routine, it is the best way to go about that. So I mean, like, for example, I'm not a morning person, so I really do have to get up a lot earlier to wake myself up and get going and that kind of stuff. So from training, I've always done ice baths anyway, but I just find that originally I was doing that for the physical benefits. I find that doing that in the morning just really sets your mind, and I like to do that along with eating a breakfast. Perhaps when I was younger, I always ate like either cereal or fruit or whatever, and it's not that there's anything really badly wrong with them, but I find like when you start off with sugars or carbs, you crash in the middle of the day. And I think there's a bit of research been done that if you start with protein and fat, like good sources in the morning, you'll make better decisions because of you're sparking the brain synapses. So I try and start my day off with red meat and eggs and maybe a bit of spinach usually. So everything kind of comes from there. I mean, I don't really have a set day-to-day diet, but the general rule is if it swims, runs, flies, or it's green, then eat it. I think it was Charles Poliquin who said that, and he was like a conditioner to a lot of Olympic medalists. So I kind of like have picked up little bits from social media and YouTube over the years to add to my routine. I think, I mean, a lot of people.
It's important to. Sorry, mate. It's important to be open to all these suggestions and implement what's useful to yourself, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Because I think if I was closed-minded, I would have been like the many others who said like, "Nah, stoicism not for me," or "Eating this way isn't for me." But I think for all the negatives that get said about the internet and social media, if you really concentrate on using it to benefit you and learn, I mean, it's done that for me because I've taken perhaps inspiration from trainers, perhaps psychology people, that kind of stuff, and just celebrities maybe in general on like their backstories.
Have you, when you look at stoicism, have you looked at Epictetus at all?
I haven't read any of his work, but I've seen a lot of his quotes because
he's an interesting.
They do quote him quite a lot.
Yeah, he's an interesting character because he was a prisoner and a slave, whereas Marcus Aurelius and Seneca were quite affluent. Obviously Marcus Aurelius was the Roman emperor and the leader of the Roman army and all that, and Seneca was quite affluent, whereas Epictetus had the same ideas, the same Stoic ideas and philosophies, but he was coming at it from being a slave and a prisoner. and it directly mimics Marcus Aurelius' thoughts, but from a place of poverty. It's interesting how he comes to the same conclusions. Yeah.
I mean that's, for me, the definition of mental strength. Of being able to, whatever negative situation you're in, find a way forward and stuff. And it's really hard. But I mean, I think that it's like they say in martial arts, everyone's got a plan till they get punched in the mouth.
Yeah.
And then when things start getting thrown at you in life, that's what I've done in the past. I've gone off track with my plans, and I don't think I've ever really had, maybe only a couple of occasions I've had, like, say, about a year or 2 years where I've absolutely nailed my routine and my training, and coincidentally, those were the years that I've been most successful. But it's easier said than done, because, things get thrown at you in life. And I think I've been guilty of perhaps using them as excuses before. And now most people, if I was to tell them about what they are, they'd probably say, well, that's a valid excuse. But I mean, I find if you just detach emotionally from it and look at it from an objective kind of perspective, then, people are way stronger than they give themselves credit for, and they can do it. So,
do you want to go into any of those life events that has happened?
Yeah. So I mean, basically, when I was younger, as I've said, like, I was being pushed towards this goal. I mean, it helped that I really did enjoy rugby and that, but I got to a point mid-teens where I would have quit if I'd have had more understanding parents. But then it got to a point where it's like, well, I'm not going to get signed now because I've not had a growth spurt young enough. Some of the lads were like, they look like grown men at 14.
Mm-hmm.
And funnily enough, I played professionally with a lot of lads that were back there at that point. So it was a hard environment to make it into the team, and I just probably thought this was the average team. But really, when I look back on it, St. Pat's junior team, we were probably the best amateur team that there's been for generations. But anyway, I wasn't going to get signed, and then when I was really thinking of quitting, I realised, I had a teacher at school who had a lot of rugby union connections, and he said, like, we're going to go and do this tournament at Kirkham Grammar School, which is a private school, but you can earn a scholarship if you play good enough. So I thought, well, I'm probably not going to go professional, but I could get, like, some education out of it, and perhaps, like, get in a better position than I would have been, what my parents wouldn't have been able to afford. So I go down this path, and then, funnily enough, like, as I was a late bloomer, when I get to like 16, I start to grow and get bigger anyway. Mm-hmm. So rugby union, like, for those that don't know, they're inherently like they're the same type of sport, rugby, but they're two different codes. And like one is a lot different. Like, rugby league's far more faster and confrontational, whereas rugby union is more of a slow grind, and there's a bit more tactics involved. So I wasn't going to learn quick enough to get to a high level with union. So I was going down this path of just trying to maybe get a uni scholarship off the back or whatever. But I went home one summer and I was playing for St. Pat's, my old club again, back at rugby league. I got picked up by Wigan. They'd noticed I'd grown since last time. And I got an opportunity, and I was, to be honest, I was way out of my depth. But I just thought, well, this is like, do you know what I mean? Like, I've just been kissed by a fairy. This was never going to happen to me. So
what do you mean when you say way out of your depth? In what way? Like, just your physicality or your skill level?
No, I mean, I probably caught the physicality aspect up by catching people up, growing. I've been used to being the smaller guy or the skinnier guy, so that wasn't the problem. But I think when you move from amateur to professional, the thinking time is cut down because it's faster. The skill level has to be bang on, and if you make a mistake, you're gone, you're out the door, because there's so many people queuing up to get the opportunity. Yeah. So I just was like, whereas a lot of lads maybe this was their bread and butter and they were 60-70% at training because they knew they were going to be in the team, I was when I was on a trial, so I didn't have a contract. Every single training session, I was just going like it was my last game.
Right.
And then the team dynamic of rugby, like, you don't want to rub people up the wrong way, because sometimes the lag that goes like full on at training, it don't sit well with everyone. So like, I realised like I got to keep the balance between impressing and like trying to hurt people at training and that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then fortunately, like, you know, I was just in the right place at the right time, and I managed to get an extended contract. And I probably, like, just through the kind of full-time environment and the perfecting the little basics over and over again, I managed to catch everyone up. And then I was probably on the performance level, but my mindset had been that of someone who wasn't as good. So, right. You know, your imposter syndrome and that kind of stuff, yeah. I just didn't feel like I should have been there. So it's probably physically mature enough, but not emotionally mature enough to take advantage, really.
Yeah. So was you not aware? I mean, you're saying this now that you might have been like suffering from imposter syndrome and thinking you're not good enough.
Yeah.
At what point did you start to recognise that? Was that something that was recognised immediately or not? Or have you only just sort of come around to that sort of thinking?
Just when I look back on it, really, I mean, you know, my dad's attitude was that, like, you got to work hard, you got to be humble, and you can't think you're ever good enough, and you've got to improve on every performance. But when you take that to the extreme, you never give yourself the credit that you deserve. Yeah. And I think that I wasn't looking at, when I was young, I'm going to have this career and go on to win things. I was thinking if I could just play in that team. So I'd achieved my grand final because I'd not looked past it. And then I thought, well, I don't really belong with these people, because these are superstars who have idolised growing up. And I mean, looking back on it, the team that we had, when I broke through into the first team squad at Wigan, it was probably one of, if not the best teams of the Super League era, like the modern era.
What year was that, Tom? Sorry?
Around 2012, 2013.
Right.
So I was like 21 at the time. And, you know, they showed faith in me. They knew I could do a job physically. But, I had a few good performances and whatever, enough to earn the contract I was on. And then they think, right, he's ready for a big game here. And I played in a few big games in some derbies, like Wigan v Saints, Wigan v Warrington. And I felt like in tackles I was as stronger as players, but certain pressure moments I just completely bottled it, if I'm being honest. I just, you know, the nerves and the environment gets to you. Everyone's putting pressure on you, putting pressure on yourself. Just dropped the ball a few times, and it was like, right, you know what I mean? You get someone else who's playing well gets put in, and then eventually, when I kind of like figured out how to cope with pressure and do my job without making mistakes, it was coming to the back end of my contract, and then I kind of thought, like, well, I'm going to have to start new here, because I've not kept myself in. I've not done good enough. And even at that point, I didn't realise, I didn't put it to how I'd been raised and how I'd been conditioned to feel not good enough. Yeah. But it's definitely what it was, looking back on it. But anyway, that's where my career with Leigh started. So
when you say about learning to cope with pressure, what sort of things did you start to work on then to enable you to be able to work under pressure and cope with that strain and that stress on the field?
So, I mean, like I say, I've gone up and down a lot in coming back to, you know, Stoic philosophies. It's not been one big thing where I've done it since that time and I've done it well.
Right.
But
okay.
I can probably pinpoint sections in my life where I come back to it and I really get everything nailed on, and then it's one of the most successful times of my life, kind of thing. And then so basically, what happened was, I got sold to Leigh, and I mean, I don't know if you were, but I mean the way that the game at the top level is ran is probably, compared to other professional sports, really unorganised. Yeah. And there's been moments where the top level there's been promotion and relegation, and then sometimes the finances aren't there, so you have to keep one full-time league and you can't get your way up.
Okay.
So anyway, at the end of that season, he said, right, promotion and relegation is back on now because we've got some wealthy championship teams who want to give him a crack at getting in. So I signed for Leigh off that strength because, like, Sean Wayne is a great coach, great motivator at Wigan. He said to me, look, you're good enough to have a career out of rugby, but just not good enough to be in this team because it's an exceptional team and you're good. I don't want you to feel bad that you're not in, and I want you to have a good life. You know, he was really great about it. Let me go. And so I thought, right, promotion relegation's coming back in. I've been on loan at Leigh before. I'm going to go there. We'll work our way back up. Then the goalposts with that got changed so many times. So I was at this point where I'm sticking to my mental philosophies. I'm training well. I'm eating well. And we're absolutely dominating it in the championship with Leigh. Mm-hmm. Midway through the season, they say, right, we've not put plans in place for promotion and relegation early enough, so it's not going to be it this year. Oh. So it's going to be next year. So I thought, right, that's a setback. I'm still young. We'll carry on going. We'll earn promotion next year. So we dominate the league that year. We win. Probably like we give a few Super League teams when we played them in the Challenge Cup a good go. So mm-hmm. we knew it wasn't like unreasonable.
Yeah.
And a goal. Anyway, we come back the next year. They said, right, we've developed a new playoff format where you've got to beat the bottom Super League teams to get in rather than just win your own league. So now the goalposts have gone from just winning your league to winning the bottom half of Super League. And don't get me wrong, that system was brilliant for the fans. And as a fan of the game, it made for really exciting rugby.
Yeah.
And I've gone from winning where we promised promotion and it didn't happen to then getting to this stage and falling short because we weren't quite there. And then the third year, the same system in place, but we absolutely smashed the competition, went up. But partway through that season, I got injured. And then despite us winning promotion, I didn't get kept on. So it's like what I mean? 3 times I had a chance to go up and something's got in the way. And then I kind of muddled through it enough. Is it like, how do I say it? Kind of like, not striving for the best, but kind of scraping through like you do, you just kind of get
just
through.
Cruising along.
Yeah. Well, I mean, whatever I seem to do, I seem to be like, well, I'm not going to play Super League again. I may as well just enjoy my career. And although it perhaps seemed like, well,
did that ease any pressure on you? Did that inside yourself relieve any pressure that you've had this influence from your dad growing up, pushing you, and you've always had the aspirations to achieve more, but now circumstances are out your control where you just have to take it as it comes? And
I mean, I think it did in a way, because like when you're thrown into a harsh environment, you just long for the comfortable road, and then that seems good at first, but I mean, you soon figure out that, like, I think Jocko Willink, former Navy SEAL, he said discipline equals freedom. And I figured out later in my 20s that you got to take the uncomfortable road to get, happiness, really. And I just associated all that hard work with negativity because I've been forced into it, rather than from the point of view, like, you do this, that's a prize, and you get success. So even though I'd worked hard, I'd done it with the wrong mindset. So without the right mindset, how hard your work doesn't matter. You got to be positive about it, no matter what.
I think one of the most positive things that I've seen in a while, and it's from Jocko Willink, the video that is titled "Good."
Yeah,
have you seen that?
I love that.
It's amazing. So anyone who's watching this or listening, if you've not seen it, just type into YouTube Jocko Willink "Good," and it's a 3-minute long video just about a mindset of anything that happens in your life, whatever circumstances. There's always good that can come out of it. It gives you an opportunity to do something else and strive for something else. It's a powerful video, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, at this point, I've been kind of like in an easier kind of environment where I'm not being challenged at the top, but I'm sticking to my principles because I'm not really being put under the pump. And then things started to put me under the pump, they started to waver. And then at the time, you know, off the field, things were getting worse and worse. And then that's when I kind of resolved myself to mediocrity, really.
Yeah.
And, you know, ultimately, I've had to pay the price and work my way back into getting the right attitude again. But I mean, off the field, that's where, you know, I had problems. So basically, my dad paid the price for his kind of hard-ass attitude with that. He didn't make a warm family environment, and my mum and dad split up. And then the negative side of that with my dad just went worse and worse because we didn't realise when we were young, but he was bipolar.
Right.
And so if he wasn't happy about how well something was done, he could be like, well, you know, it's all right, we'll deal with it or whatever. Or it could be all hell's broken loose and it's a big argument or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, after the divorce happened, my sister had gone away to uni. So in her mind, she'd escaped that. She was doing athletics for fun now, and probably went down a similar path to me where she, you know, was happy to be not where she'd been before. But then eventually, she's really good academically. She traded it for a work life because, you know, she was really up there, A's and A stars kind of thing. So, I mean, with me, I didn't really have much direction anywhere else, and I'd gone to semi-pro because I wasn't at that level anymore. And my dad had retired from work then. He'd had a bad back all his life and that, and he had to retire a bit before 60. So yeah, I was being expected to work and play semi-pro to prop him up and pay the mortgage of the house that we were living in. Now, this was a 4 or 5 bedroom family house, and I felt that pressure massively. And then you know, due to how he was with my rugby, you know, if I wasn't doing well enough, you know, he'd be on to me because, like, you've got to do it now, otherwise we'll be on the streets.
Yeah.
So
at this point, did you understand about his bipolar, or was it still sort of undiagnosed and you didn't know a lot about it?
I'd heard about it. I'd heard about it from him, but I didn't know what it was. And to me, it just seemed like I'm being really taken advantage of here, kind of thing. And I really clashed with my dad at that point. And I mean, before it had been like, yeah, I don't like how hard you are on me, but, you know, I still love you as a dad and all that kind of stuff. But it gotten really to the point where it's like, the only reason I'm living with you is because we're in a bad spot and I really don't want anything to do with you. But I didn't feel like I had much of the choice. And I mean, back then, I say back then, it was only 6-7 years ago. It wasn't perhaps to the extent that it is now talked about, like the importance of coming and talking to people about your personal issues. I'd always been of the mindset where, like, well, if I come to my coach and say this, that, and the other as an excuse, he's going to think, you know, you're not mentally strong enough to do your job and that kind of stuff. And then,
so was that never an option for you to go and talk to people about what was going on at home?
Well, I mean, the odd time where, I mean, being a physical sport, rugby, like when I was at Wigan, sometimes like things that get confrontational at training sometimes, whether that's on the training paddock or just, you know, when you're messing about in the break room or whatever. Yeah. And then lads are playing pranks on each other all the time. And a lot of time I took it personally because I had this kind of emotional baggage with me. And then, you know, when they don't know what's wrong with you, you don't think that they'd understand, but most of the time they would do. But because I didn't tell them, they just thought he's being soft. Like, well, I really started getting to me.
Yeah.
Anyway, looking back on it now, if it wasn't in that situation, stuff would be really funny. You know what they did? It's just lads having banter and whatever. And sometimes lads used to like prank call our house, and if my dad answered it, you know, he'd not find it funny and all that kind of stuff. So one day I went in, it was like, enough is enough. And I said to a few people about what it was. And, you know, no one believed me, to be fair. I didn't tell the right people. And I think that's one thing what, you know, they thought that I was just trying to like wiggle my way out of the position and whatever. And that's one thing that I don't think gets spoken about enough. we're all about talking now, but I think talking smartly to the right people who can help you rather than just venting. Because when you vent, like what my dad did to me, he vented to me, and I couldn't help him because I didn't have the means to help him, and it just made both of us worse. So I think it's good to talk and everything, but you got to find someone.
The right outlet.
Yeah. And then since all that's happened, we've had stuff come into the game like Rugby League Curs, Sporting Chance, and they're independent from your team. So what players can do now is they can speak to them and it won't get back to the team, and they can put in place any kind of help you need, and it's absolutely brilliant what they do now. So,
must admit, from my point of view, over the last 3 or 4 years, there has been a lot more awareness in rugby league in general, but in sport in general, about the mental health side of it, and all these different organisations coming in where you can ring up independently and get support. But there's a lot of press. That stigma, I think, is slowly, getting better, isn't it? That there is more acceptance of people being able to talk about the issues and the problems.
I think the problem comes is that there's always cynical people who will see that, well, somebody's using mental health for financial gain or something like that, and then all of the negative gets lumped in with what people are trying to do positively, and then it kind of shies people away from it. And I think more things like this, like stuff what's done for the community interest rather than for personal gain, and it's not done in a cynical way. It's not just promotion. It's getting to the nuts and bolts of things. This is the stuff that can help, I think.
Definitely. The more advocates like yourself. When I spoke to Jamie Acton as well, he was quite open and honest about some of his mental health experiences in retiring early from rugby. And the more people who get out there and talk about it, the more it'll reduce that stigma, and it'll help people, definitely. It can't not do. You know what I mean? Especially like big, perceived tough, big, strong rugby lads talking about their emotions and feelings. It can't not trickle down into the wider community.
I mean that's like kind of. I mean, what I was going to talk about later on is what I'm doing now to help with people. But my insecurities about starting stuff like that was, no one's going to care what I say because I'm not the top performer in my field, and it, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
People aren't interested in mediocre people. I'm hoping that I can just provide more relatable stuff, and perhaps if it only helps a few people, it's better than helping no one. So I mean, what ensued from that point was what led me down all of this. It got gradually worse, but everything I was doing was masking the problem rather than dealing with it. So I managed to get a good contract at London Broncos, moving on from that injury with Leigh. Yeah. And we downsized the house, so it was kind of a temporary stopgap. So we sold the house and got a smaller house, but my dad wasn't working and he was too old to get a mortgage, so I was paying for the mortgage. So I was basically supporting him, and then he was worried about me going away and not being there to support him. I was thinking like, well, part of me wanted to be away from the drama of being around him, but then I was like, well, I can come back up at weekends and stuff like that, and you're going to have more, you're going to have no mortgage now. So I thought it was going to kind of just go away, but being away for a few days at a time, every time I was training or playing, it really didn't help things. And then it came to the point where, because he was quite secretive about his own personal money and he'd not been managing it well, he was really concerned. I couldn't fathom that he didn't have the money to get by with what I thought he had, because I was paying all the bills and paying my own bills. Well, then it comes to a point midway down there when I'm in London where he's really absolutely lost it mentally, and it's I know a lot more about bipolar at this stage, and he's really like, I've got to just not fall out with him and try and help him as good as possible.
Yeah.
And I've got my own kind of mental burden because I'm paying 2 sets of bills, and then I'm back to the point where if I don't win on the weekend, a bill's not going to get paid. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And it was really hard because, like, as you know, London is an expensive place to live, and from what I saw as a positive opportunity, it kind of spiraled out of control. But I mean, at that kind of point, while all this has been going on, my mum had been getting her life back on her feet, because the whole divorce had really like knocked her for six, because she left with nothing, basically. Right. She wanted to get out of the kind of abusive household. So she just got back to the point where she couldn't now help me. So she started like contributing here and there. So she was like, I'm happy to help you, but if you're just passing it on to Dad, you don't know what he's doing with it. Do you know what I mean? You need to try and sit him down, go through his finances, sort it all out and that. And he just wasn't playing ball. And then it was a really tough like time. But as this is going on, we're back with London now. We're back in this race for promotion, and this could be a genuine opportunity to now play Super League after having the goalpost moved 4 times already.
Yeah.
So, like, that's selfishly as an athlete,
that's a lot for you to deal with mentally.
You throw yourself into that. Yeah, I mean, I threw myself into that, and we earned promotion, and we did really well. And I thought with everything what was going on, I wasn't at my best at 100%, but I did enough to contribute, and that was probably the best year I've ever had. But unfortunately, it wasn't enough to earn myself another contract into Super League. And part of me blamed my dad, because I thought, well, I would have been, better if I wasn't having lack of sleep by bombing up and down to London, worrying about finance and all that stuff. And then I just came to the point where I thought, I've had like hiccups along the way that many times. Whatever happens, I just don't care. So I'm just going to be as positive as possible. And I really, really doubled down at getting positive. And so came back up, went part-time again, back with Leigh, who in this time, they've gone down the ranks, so they've gone part-time again.
Right.
And I'm really going to like just take everything on the chin from my dad. I'm going to get him right, because this is the point where he's threatening suicide if I don't pay him this amount of much by a certain day or whatever.
Yeah.
It was really taking its toll, but my positivity was like, my feelings don't matter. And that took its toll on me after a bit, but at the time I thought, that's how I'm dealing with it.
What did you think? Sorry, Tom, to interrupt you. When your dad was talking about suicide, what was your thoughts about it? Did you think he was serious, or how did you deal with that?
A lot of the time, I thought he was just manipulating me, and because it was wearing me out, and I wanted to do
like an emotional blackmail.
Yeah, I felt like I've gone down this road because he's pushed me into it, and I'm doing what you want me to do, and now I'm starting to have some hope. You're getting in my way, and it was really hard. But then I really did think a few times, he's being serious here. But I mean, sometimes I step back and say, he's just kind of manipulated me there to, give up my month's wage to him or whatever. So, I mean, a lot of other lads at that time, I'd not told anyone about how bad it had got. And a lot of other lads at that time, they were getting frustrated with me, because away from playing rugby, they want to do what lads do, have a good crack, go out for food, go out for drinks, all that kind of stuff. And they just thought I was being antisocial and and tight with my money and stuff like that. But I just couldn't bear to tell them what was going on. Anyway, when I was at Leigh, John Duffy had become coach. He's still coach now, and he played with me, so I knew him on a lot more personal level. I really trusted him. Finally opened up. I opened up to him. It made me feel really, really good, and I felt like things were going somewhere. We were really working together. He was giving me the understanding I needed off the field, and he was encouraging me on the field, and it was giving me a fresh bit of outlook to help my dad. And then I thought, just as I kind of thought things were getting better, he had a crash on his bike. He'd been into cycling all his life, and he got told then that because his back was already bad, it made it worse, and he was going to need an operation to put him in a wheelchair. And I thought, all I can do is give him the kind of experience I've had, where I've had a knee reconstruction with rugby when I was Leigh the first time. And like, you can rehab your way out of these things, because it wasn't one of those where he's going to be paralysed from the waist down. It was going to be one of these where, you know, you see athletes rehab from these things.
Yeah.
And then because of his age, he was just like, I can't do that. So I thought, I'll really be positive and get him into it, but he just wasn't having it. And then, you know, lo and behold, eventually one day I came back after playing a game of rugby, and without warning, he'd been fine mentally, well, seemingly to me the last few days. I walked in and he'd hung himself on the door as soon as I walk in the kitchen. So I had to pull him off, and there was still air coming in and out, and I had to do CPR and that, trying to revive him. And he had the ambulance on loudspeaker. They got there, you know, within a few minutes. I was amazed how quick they got there, and then they really tried everything they could, but they couldn't bring him back. And then, you know, it was one of the, I won't wish it upon anyone. And even though he had talked about all of that kind of stuff previously, nothing at all prepares you. So I came to a point where,
looking back now, you still can't sort of see any warning signs or any indication that was what he was planning on doing.
Well, he'd said it that much as throwaway comments, and that I just thought he's just doing it to manipulate. But and then a part of me was guilty because, you know, because I thought that way. But I honestly did everything I could. You know, I couldn't have taken any more on the chin and keep supporting him and whatever. It was just, you know, I resolved to think of it this way, that he died of a disease, because that's what it is. I couldn't cure his disease, and despite how much I encouraged him, he wouldn't go and, you know, sit in a group or, you know, that kind of stuff. He's just too old school. He just wouldn't do it. Mm-hmm. And you know, it's this demographic of blokes who are this way that it affects, and it's the reason. I mean, the modern world is way different to the mindset of these blokes underneath. They want to be like animalistic, however they are, and it just doesn't fit in the modern world, and they need outlets. So I just came to the point after that where I thought, I've dabbled in stuff with my mindset at times, and it's worked good, but I've never religiously stick to it. So I just made the decision after that, I'm gonna completely change my life and be like it's a religion. I'm gonna be this way all the time if I can. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna put everything, and I'm not gonna die wondering, because basically a lot of his life was regret at not achieving the things he wanted to achieve, and he felt like he just failed. So I thought, well, I'm going to get as far as I can in rugby. I've got this experience in these jobs I've had, so, you know, stuff with mental health with kids, personal training, finance. I thought, I'm going to put all that into, you know, starting off, you know, some kind of brand. And I thought, this is going to be my way. I make this okay.
Yeah.
And so
that's your way of taking the positive from an unbelievably devastating situation, but that mindset that you've adopted all the way through growing up has enabled you to deal with this terrible situation somehow and get some positive from it, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's all you can do, mate. I mean, the problem is, I think, the cure for depression, not a cure as a pill, the cure as the best preventative measure, is something actually hard to do, in terms of training physically, training mentally, eating right. When people have an unhealthy lifestyle thrown in the face by adverts all the time, that they don't know any different, and it seems like to the average person, I can't do that. I can't get my way out of this depression. Well, that's why I want to do this. So
if there's anybody listening or watching this now who maybe hasn't dealt with similar experiences but is feeling similar emotions and thoughts like depression or regret, or dealing with death in the family or suicide, Could you just give a couple of little, I don't know, mindset tips that you dealt with straight away, that what clicked for you straight away?
I think the first thing is to, no matter how hard it is, don't blame yourself. You may have done everything you could, or you may not have done, but as harsh as it sounds, it's already happened to whoever your loved one is, or if it's happening to you and you're feeling it, like, you know, just get help. And, you know, you have to leave your ego at the door, because a lad I used to play rugby against, Luke Campbell, he's doing great things with mental health. He put something on before.
Andy's man club, isn't it? Yeah, Luke Campbell, yeah.
Yeah, he put something on saying, I'd rather listen to your story than go to your funeral. And, you know, people, if you give them the chance, they will listen to you. And I mean, Rugby League Curse really helped me with it all. Steve McCormack, he was an ear for me. And then I think I soon realised, rather than talking and dwelling on it, I've got it off my chest. I've said, right, action now, because a lot of people, they do the first step and they talk. Well, then what comes after that? You got to fix the problem. And the most actionable things are stuff you control, like your health, what you put in your body, affects your mood, affects your thoughts. Getting that kind of rush of dopamine from training, endorphins, that really sets you up for the day. And like, I obviously have to train performance-wise for rugby, but I think training is something that's been part of my life. I'm always going to do it after rugby, because I'm not always training for performance. I'm training to feel good every day.
Yeah.
Without that, I can't, like, if I can, like, obviously you can't go to gyms and that now, but I've got to wake up and do some kind of bodyweight exercises, some kind of running. And, you know, if I've got a rugby game coming up or whatever, I just do a little bit of something to get the blood flowing, where I don't want to be sore. But, you know, it can be, you know, people love to say, you know, I don't have the time and that, but it can be 5-10 minutes before the kids get up or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, anything.
I think people get confused, don't they, between, like, when people talk about exercise, people automatically assume, or go in the gym, lifting weights, training to be aesthetically pleasing, having a good body and all that. But the connection that the physical body has to the mind, I don't think a lot of people realise that exercise and being able to feel good to induce these endorphins and dopamine and all the other chemicals, it can just be a matter of bodyweight exercise, a bit of stretching, a bit of movement-based stuff. It doesn't have to be just go in the gym lifting weights, does it?
From my kind of, like, I've been on this crusade on, like, self-help Twitter, on picking out the best points from all these inspirational people. And what I'm seeing is the best business people now, they're not the old-fashioned fat guys in a chair with a cigar. They're in shape. And because they're fitter, they're mentally fitter, and they earn more money because they're fitter. And I've really, like, kind of delved into that world with what I'm doing on the side as a job with rugby now, as a financial advisor, because it's kind of like my future away from the game in one respect, but it's also helping people when setting up stuff like insurance policies, funeral plans, life insurance, and that's all stuff that is close to my heart because of what happened. Yeah. And you know, I feel like also the advice financially fits with training, because you're trying to be healthier for your kids, you're trying to have more money for your kids and your family. It's all, you know, what you can leave as your legacy. It's all interlinked. And a lot of people are like, no time because of work. It should be part of everyone's working day, because, you know, it's no good being unhealthy and a load of money and dying at 40, is it? Like, you know what I mean?
I know. And when people think of health, and it's a point you just touched on there, and again, I've gone down like the self-help route and been obsessed by self-help books for years and years, and drawing different influences from different people and stuff. And a lot of people talk about health, we automatically again assume our body health, but you can have emotional health, financial health, physical health, and mental health, and all this stuff is health in itself, doesn't it? It doesn't just mean your body.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Because when we moved, me and my dad, from the old house, as you know, a lot of people, they set up a life or a critical illness insurance policy to pay off the mortgage if you die.
Yeah.
Now, he hadn't disclosed on there he's bipolar. So he thought, well, we're going to get a good deal at this because, do you know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with me. But because he hadn't disclosed it, when he died, the mortgage weren't paid off. So he left with debt after he died. Also, you know, because he'd not got things in place, you know, for people to sort out his estate and that kind of stuff. I had to do all of that. So I had to deal with all his belongings.
Yeah.
His will wasn't up to date and all that kind of stuff. So all this kind of stuff financially that I do is literally directly related to my experience, and that's why, you know, I'm really throwing myself into that, because if I can help someone, you know, have peace of mind because they know their funeral's paid for or they know that the mortgage is paid off, that's massive, because I wouldn't want anyone to go through not only the act of him killing himself, but it's still going on now. It happened last year and the process still hasn't finished, because it's called a probate process, where everything gets decided on what happens with all your finances and everything, and your house and what you own. And it can take forever, especially under the circumstances that it happened. So if I can be of help to people like that, that's massive for me.
So just before we finish off, can you talk a little bit how you're starting to implement that? So you've got the financial side of it, the mental health, and the physical aspect.
So I mean, from the financial side, I'm now qualified to advise on personal protection. So that's all that stuff that I've just talked about in terms of and I'm now learning about business protection. So for the climate we're in, where businesses get interrupted, insurance policies that will pay out the outgoings of the business and that kind of stuff. So, you know, it's a big topic, what people want to discuss. The physical side, I'm a qualified level 3 PT and level 2 rugby coach, and obviously got the rugby experience in there. Yeah. And I'm really big on and interested in nutrition. And then from the mental side, obviously everything that I've been through, and I'll have to give a shout out to Leigh Community Trust, because I work with them, you know, helping disadvantaged kids out. And I think the programme that me and a few other rugby lads did, we got all of these lads who were expelled from schools back into either full-time education or work after the programme. So we just had more of a kind of understanding, relatable ear of our own personal experiences and help them.
Was that with Mick and Oz at the Community Trust, was it? Yeah. So I mean, that's that's a great initiative. I'm, you know, really behind that. So we've got the 3 kind of pronged attack there. Mm-hmm. I'm probably looking at the back end of this year having it kind of all locked into one kind of brand with a website that I'm developing at the minute. I've kind of been doing that throughout my time in lockdown. So as well as that, I'm still working, actually helping clients financially. So sorting all their insurance out and stuff like that. And I've been putting some things on Twitter and people have been DMing me. So anyone interested in letting me help you there, DM me if you've got any kind of financial worries that I can either help or I can pass them on to something. And then I'm just going to, for want of a better word, interlock it all and put it in one big kind of self-help brand. So I think it's a really good idea, because obviously the mental and the physical side to one side, I mean, financial money troubles and stuff is a massive thing at the moment, isn't it? People have massive issues with debt, and that can then compound to mental health issues and that as well. So I think it's a really good idea. So because the best. Sorry, go on.
If this had happened a few years ago, when I was supporting my dad, I would have been absolutely buggered financially. So, you know, there's a lot of people who are out there who are propping up family members, or, you know, they've been laid off at work and all that kind of stuff. And that's what we're here for. The company's called Your Protection, and we're actually ranked the number 1 personal protection firm in the Northwest, because most people have trusted us to look after those kinds of things. So you know, it's really rewarding.
Yeah. What's the best platform to get in contact with? Did you say Twitter?
Yeah, Twitter, T Spenner 8, and I'm starting a YouTube. So I did a bit of an introductory video the other week and explaining what I've explained to you and what I want to do. And there's going to be some content going out on there, and I'm just looking to get on whatever podcasts I can get on and talk about, you know, your protection financially, you know, my mental experience of what I've been through, and the sport and the physical side of things also.
Yeah, I think it's an important message, mate. And one of the reasons why I started doing this is about the I'm big on peer-to-peer support. So not necessarily it all being about professionals who are all trained and psychologists, people who've got lived experiences who can support other people in the community through sharing that experience. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I have to say before we finish that when everything got really bad in the last few years, and I did all the things that I said I did, at that time, that's when I opened up to my close few friends. So, you know, like Rodri Lloyd, who came up from Wales to play with me at Wigan, he plays at Swinton now. John O'Donnell, he's a rugby union player, and Connor Farrell, Liam Farrell's brother. You know, he's also a professional rugby lad from Wigan, and Jamie Acton as well. He's been on the podcast. Those four have been pillars of strength for me. And then, like I said, I opened up to John Duffy, my coach, and I wasn't keen on going to the rest of the lads about it, but he got them all on board, and it's the best thing he could have done for me, because all of the Leigh lads, I just never experienced that amount of love before by a full team. I walked into the meeting room, and I knew that lads were, and it was stupid on me really, because like they're not going to judge me negatively for what's happened, but people feel like you're going to get judged negatively. That's why they don't open up. But honestly, it was the best thing that ever happened, telling people and opening up, because the love and support I got off everyone was, you know, couldn't ask for more.
Such a simple idea, but one of the hardest things imaginable, isn't it, to actually talk and open up about stuff that you're suffering or you're going through.
Yeah, and I mean, like we say, you know, you've got to get action off the back of talk and putting things in place. Off the back of talking to people, you know, there might have been one lad saying, right, I can help you in your day by dropping this off for you, or nipping here for you if you've got something to deal with. You know, they all knew I had to be, you know, at the solicitors dealing with what had happened. Mm-hmm. You know, he left a mess of things financially, and you know, we had to sell the house, and then I'm still at my mum's now because we sold the house, and you know, we were looking to get a new house, and because of what's happened, that's all been delayed. So I think it's another case of I could look at it like, oh, I've still not got my own place, it's all bad. But what I'm looking at is, you know, no one close to me has got this horrible disease at the minute, which is good.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the fact that people are there to help me, and they have been, and they've been massive pillars of support. And you know, there's people who aren't lucky enough to have a home, so I'd rather be with my mum for a few extra months and get a place. You know what I mean? So it's all first world problems, isn't it, mate?
Exactly, I know. And I think that we were talking. I had was doing a podcast yesterday with a jiu-jitsu instructor down in London, and we were talking about the mindsets of people within this epidemic that we find ourselves in now. And I think it's going to give a lot of people time to understand what's important to them, and what are the other stuff, like the superficial and the materialistic stuff isn't important. It's who you've got around you. It's your family, your friends.
That's it, mate. I've been really guilty of it myself. You know, when I get this money, I'm going to buy this car. I'm going to get X, Y, and Z. But we're talking about Francis Ngannou before. He was on Mike Tyson's podcast, right? And he said, from what he grew up seeing in Africa, being homeless in France when he went there illegally, it was like heaven. So I just saw that, and I thought, like, things have happened badly with me, but I thought, you know, I couldn't imagine living the way that some people lived, and you know, if he can do that and come out on top and become, you know, the force he is in the UFC, I can do this little bit to help people in this corner of the world.
Definitely, and just to finish off, it comes back to stoicism, like we was on about before, and this perspective.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Definitely, mate. It's gotta. I mean, it underpins everything when you really think about it. So, yeah.
Well, it's an amazing story, mate, and I can't imagine some of the emotions and the feelings you've gone through. But thanks for coming on and sharing the story and being so honest about it. And I think a lot of people will get stuff from it if they're suffering similar feelings and emotions and worries and concerns.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, mate. Yeah, and like I say, it's good to talk and get it out there. It makes me feel better just saying it, and hopefully anyone's watching, it can encourage you to get help and, or get into something positive and productive.
Yeah, no worries, Tom. Thanks again, mate. Thanks for your time.